Hi guys, it's Mr. Robeson here. We are going to take a look at the first section of Unit 2 today, which involves graphs. We're going to look at bar graphs, dot plots, and stem and leaf plots in particular. All right, so before we can make graphs, we've got to talk about the two types of variables we can use when we're going to collect data, and these two types of variables we could use for our x-axis. So the first one is categorical. So these are our labels, like if you're choosing a favorite pet or picking a favorite color or letter grades. So like these are not numbers most of the time. The other type are quantitative. So these are the numbers. So when we're working with numbers, like you're getting test grades, we're scoring points for some sort of a game, any sort of numbers that we get are going to be quantitative. Like this is has the word quantities in it. That's where this quantitative is coming from. And this has the word category in it. So that's why this is breaking up into categories, non-numbers, and this is breaking up into quantitative or quantities, which are numbers. All right, so what does the distribution of a variable mean? So that's what we're doing when we're making these graphs. We're really looking at the distribution of a variable. Well, it includes all the values a variable can take, as well as how often the variable takes those values from actual data or from some sort of model, some maybe probabilistic model that we'll look at later on in the year when we look at probability. All right, so how can these be made? Well, we can put them into a table, like we can like X and Y and, put them in like that, like you did before when you were graphing points and things like that. But we can also organize this information in graphs, and that's what we're going to look at in this unit is graphs. All right, so here's the first type of graph we're looking at. Hopefully you've done graphs before or some sort of bar graph before. So we're working with a categorical variable. So in other words, we are looking at a non-number, non-numerical variable, and that's going to be our x-axis. And then our frequency count, like how many is going to be our y-axis. So for instance, if we asked a bunch of people what's their favorite color out of these colors, pink, blue, orange, green, and purple, naturally we should all pick blue, right? This is what the bar graph would look like from some sort of collected data. So this means here we got pink, we've got 8 people that chose pink, we've got 10 people that chose blue, we got 3 people that went with orange, 5 people went with green, and 9 people said purple. All right, so we can look at the frequency counts, and that's where I'm getting these numbers from. So this is our y-axis here, the frequency counts. So we need to have a y-axis. It needs to be labeled with some sort of a title frequency and with numbers. We need to have some sort of an x-axis. It's labeled with categories down here. All right, and it's got a heading there, colors. And look, we have a title up here also. So we need some sort of title usually for our bar graphs. And I mean, we can dress it up. We can make it pretty with colors to match, all sorts of weird things you can do with bar graphs to make them look pretty. But that's bar graphs. All right, next type of graph is a dot plot. All right, so a dot plot can use either the categorical variable or the quantitative variable for our x-axis. The y-axis is, again, the frequencies. All right, in fact, everything we're going to do y-axis is frequencies. So for categories, it really is very similar to a bar graph. All right, so the dots are like the height of the bars. So like if we were asked what's your preferred snack choice, like I guess this may be at the movies, who knows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dots here. So we just put dots, and each dot represents one individual. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 dots here, 5 dots, and 6 dots, and 3 dots down here for pretzels. So notice we've still labeled our x-axis. All right, these are categorical. And we left off our y-axis, so we don't have to draw a y-axis. All right, so that's always going to be true for the dot plots. So there's no y-axis needed here. We just stack the dots on top of each other. And however many dots high it is, that's how many data values we have there. All right, this also works for quantitative data. So it also works with numbers. It is still similar to a bar graph. Like if you just turn these into bars, it would essentially be like a bar graph. It actually would be what we call a histogram, which we'll talk about later. But these are fuel economies in miles per gallon of randomly sampled 2015 car models. So here's our title up here. We needed a title up here, so maybe snacks. Looks like they did the title down here instead. Doesn't matter where we put it, as long as there's a title there somewhere. So this is fuel economy in miles per gallon. So we've labeled our x-axis with numbers. which is miles per gallon, and we're going from 16 all the way up to 40. And so this would say, okay, one car had 16 miles per gallon. We have one here between, so that would be 23. One car had 24. Looks like 31 is the one that has the most, which has, looks like 6. Right? And that's how we would read that sort of graph. All right, so we always start from the bottom when we're putting the dots. So like if we had a car that had 20, we'd put it there. All right, and if we had another one that had 20, we'd put it above it, just a little ways above it. We just space them out. All right, like if we had a 34, we'd put that up here. 35 would be in between, and so on. All right, so that's how we make dot plots. All right, usually we just make the y-axis first, and then we just fill in the dots later. Again, no y-axis needed, just the x-axis. All right, so creating bar graphs and dot plots. So teachers at a high school were asked what year was the first presidential election they voted in. The results are in the table below. Each X represents one teacher. Use the data to create a bar graph and a dot plot. So let's make a bar graph first. So with the bar graph, I do need to have a y-axis and an x-axis. Y-axis is generally going to be frequencies. And the x-axis, it looks like we're going to go by election year here. All right, and it looks like we're going from 92 to 2020, counting by 4. So I'm going to start here with 92, 96, 2000, 04, 08, 12, after 2012, 2016, and some younger ones would be their first time voting in the election. And now let's see, we'll make the bars. So it looks like we're going 2, 1, 5, 4, just counting the X's here, 6, 5, 3, 1. So we're going to go up, well, let's see, we need to go up to at least 6 here. So on my y-axis, I'm going to go to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I want to keep these evenly spaced out. We want some sort of scale here. So the first bar is going up to 2. X bar is going up to 1. All right, here's me. The first presidential I got to vote in was 2000. And I voted in Florida, so that was a fun one. So going up to 5. Figured that would disappear on me. And then for 04, we've got 4 people. Notice the bars are spaced out. They're not touching each other. 08, we've got 6 people. So that's going to be our highest bar, up and down. We try and keep these straight. I know my lines aren't perfect here. It's not so easy to draw on this guy here. All bars should be the same width. And the only thing different should be the height and where they are starting. And then 2020, we're going to have one person down here. And there's our bar graph. All right, so sometimes people find it easier to read the bar graphs. Other times people find it easier to read the dot plots. So let's make a dot plot. We're going from 92, again counting by 4s. And this, I guess we could say that this is a categorical because we have years down here. It's not necessarily numerical, it's chronological, I guess we could say. If you also wanted to consider this quantitative, we could consider this quantitative if we really wanted to. And now we're just putting dots. So we've got 2 dots there, 1 dot there, and 5 dots there. If you want to do something besides dots, like make stars or draw fish or, I don't know, smiley faces or something like that, you can do that as long as you use the same symbol all the way throughout. And we got 6 here. There's our 6, and then 5, 3, and 1. All right, notice all the 1s are about the same height, all the 2s are about the same height. We want these spaced out evenly, so this should have the same shape as this guy goes. It goes down, and then it goes back up, and then down, and then up, and then down. So down, up, and then down. All right, so the next type of plot we have is called a stem and leaf plot, or sometimes we'll just call them stem plots because we're lazy. All right, let's switch back to a color here. How about blue? All right, so on one side of this, we have what's called the stem, and on the other side, we have what's called the leaves. So often, the stem is like the tens digit, and the leaves are the ones digit. All right, so here's a set of numbers. How many nonstop push-ups can you do? And let's see. So these have no 10s. The 10s start with 1. Looks like a lot of those. And then we've got the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s. So the stem for these guys would be 0, and then we'd have a 2, a 5, and a 7. The stem for these guys, the tens digit here is a 1. We've got 10, 12, another 12, 14, 16, 16, 18, 19. We're just spacing out the numbers. We don't need commas here. If you want to put a comma, you can, but we know that each one of these just stands for one digit. Then we've got the 20s with 20, 21, 29. And then we've got the 30s with 32, 34, 35, 37, and 38. And finally the 40s with 42 and 44. All right, and these kind of work like bars. Like we think about this, if we turn our head sideways, we can think about this as a bar graph, just sideways. All right, we do need to put a key whenever we do this. So we could just pick one, like 42 here would be 4 with a line 2 would equal the number 42. And the units here would be push-ups. It's always good to put units. All right, so there's our key. I didn't forget. Yeah, I remembered. So the stem is the tens digit. The leaf is the ones digit, like 0, 2 would be the number 2. 1, 4 would be the number 14, and so on. All right, and we can also do something called a back-to-back stem plot. So let's see, our stems here would be 1, then we've got the 20s all the way up to here. Then we've got 30s, 40s, and 50s. By the way, these are the number of games won in each conference of the NBA last season. Let's see here, we've got 50s, 40s, more 40s here, 30s. And we don't have any 20s, but then we do have 10s. So what we do for the back-to-back one is in the middle, we put our stems. And we've got 1 all the way up to 5. We can start with 5 on top, or we can start with 1 on top. It really doesn't make a difference. I'm going to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on this side, we'll do the Western Conference. On this side, we'll do the Eastern. So with the 1 here, all we've got is 19, so we'll put the 9 there. For the 20s, we've got 20, 20, so 0, 0, 21, 22, 1, 2, 23, 25. So 23, 25. All right, over here, we have no 20s. We do have a 19 and a 15, so we'll do 15, 19. All right, 30s, let's see, we've got a 33 and a 35, so 3, 5. Let's look over here. Do we have any 30s? Yes, we got lots of 30s. So we got a 0, a 1, a 2, a 4, a 4, and a 5. All right, with 40s, we've got a 3, 4, 5, 8. So 3, a 4, a 5, and an 8. Over here with 40s, we've got a 3, and then 3 4s in a row, and then a 6, and then a 9. And then finally, we've got a 52 here in the Western Conference, which I believe was the Lakers. And a 53 and a 56 over here. 53 and 56. 56, I believe, was the Bucks. We would want some sort of key. So the key is 5 with a 2 equals 52 wins. All right, so here's here's our stem plot for the Western Conference on this side. And for the Eastern Conference is on this side. So we can kind of compare them and be like, well, look, if we kind of cut it off here, looks like the Western Conference has a lot more wins and the Eastern Conference has a lot more teams without the wins. So the Western Conference looks like a better, stronger conference. All right, so that is it for our graphs for today. So hopefully you can make a bar graph now, a dot plot, and a stem and leaf plot, maybe even a back-to-back stem and leaf plot. So check out the homework. It is on Google Classroom.